Okay, so imagine you lived thousands of years ago and you're a farmer. Okay, so you've got a piece of land, let's say, and you've got a family, you've got a crop that you're comfortable in growing, maybe some livestock, yeah? And now let's think about, your family situation. What would make your family situation better? Well, probably if you could grow more crops, yeah. If your livestock could become more productive, more fatter maybe, produce more milk and eggs and all of that, then maybe that's a good indication of your family well-being, yeah? And so how we might look to measure the well-being of a family might be based on the amount that they produce, yeah? Because this can lead to different things, but mainly leads to wealth, leads to your ability to build, and in particular save for the future to secure your family's future in particular. Okay, so the question is, what mechanisms can lead to your family producing more? So how could you, as a family, produce more crops, more meat, more milk? All right, so let's think about this. So what's some things that you could do? Well, maybe you could have kids. Yeah, if you have kids and they, especially once they are old enough to get out onto the farm, they can help produce things. And if you're, good at teaching them and they can pick up the skills of farming well, then yeah, now you've got more people to help you to do the stuff around the farm, and maybe you can produce more. So the number of workers you have in the fields is probably one way in which you can see an increase in your production. What else? Well, maybe you could bring other workers in, but in particular, maybe you could focus on overall skill sets and training of those current workers. So maybe not even bring in new workers, but just the current workers you have. Maybe it's kids, maybe it's just you and your wife, maybe. Yeah, maybe just focus on upskilling. Maybe if you do that, then you'll have more production. Okay. What's the other main thing you might do? Well, if we can harness some of the newer technologies we see out there in the world. Thousands of years ago, maybe it was moving from or moving through the different metals, from bronze, and maybe bring in some steel. Maybe you get some technologies such as plows, which you can put on the back of oxen to plow the fields. Yeah. Technologies to divert water to help your crops grow. Technologies in logistics and getting things, harvesting and getting things to market. So maybe you can increase your production by taking on new technologies, right? Now, not much has changed in regards to the mechanisms which drive economic production. And it's really these three main drivers. That is the number of workers you have in your workforce, also the amount of skills that your workforce have, and also the amount of technologies that you adopt. And yes, skills and technology are somewhat integrated. That is, a lot of the skills that we want to learn is how to use the new technologies. Yep. So, these are mechanisms which drive economic prosperity today as well. There's one thing I didn't mention. These are the things that are outside of our control. In particular, we can't really control the behaviours of those around us. Like we could, actually, I think, I know, thought I was going the wrong way. I think you could build up the best economic system for your farm, have the best skilled people, have the best workers, have the best technology, and then some marauding barbarians might come and just take it all from you. Yep. But yes, what are the external factors that can drive economic prosperity? Probably the major one is just natural resources, right? If you have a nice strong river near you where you can get clean water and you can divert waterways to your crops and for your livestock and all of that, then that's great. And also rivers help with transportation, getting big amounts of product to and from your farm. And what feeds those rivers is important. How flat your terrain is important as well. Hilly terrain like I'm walking through at the moment might not necessarily be great for trying to plant crops and look after livestock. But yes, natural resources is one of the big one, but also just external threats and perhaps other external opportunities as well can drive your economic production. So why am I talking about this? Well, in today's global economy, we often try to predict where the global economy or domestic economies are going. And this is economic analysis, but this is key insights that a lot of different stakeholders within society want. Investors definitely do a lot of economic analysis. They understand that businesses that they invest in are likely to be impacted by the economy. Politicians and society in general understand that good economic conditions likely lead to likely lead to well-being, greater well-being. The more stuff we have might mean just generally greater happiness in society, not necessarily though, right? But yeah, so we try to understand all these things so that we can understand where we're at and where we might be going. One of the key measures we take in this regards is gross domestic product, or other things like gross national product or income. But this is a measure which tries to capture the amount that we're producing over a period of time, quarterly or annually. And so what we might want to know, especially as investors, especially those planning for the future, looking for future opportunities, we want to know what the future holds in regards to the economy, and in particular, where are we going to be able to produce more, or are we going to have some kind of recessionary pressures coming in? And so, going back to our farming example, those three main mechanisms of productivity, that is, what does our workforce look like, what do the skill sets look like, and what does technology look like? These are the three things that we focus on. And not that we shouldn't focus on the other stuff, right? Especially natural resources, logistics in particular. Those give your economic prosperity a foundational boost, let's say. But we can't really impact those too much. Only through technologies can we shape our natural environment, let's say. Sometimes to our future detriment. But yeah, when it comes to the economic well-being of a society, of a nation in particular, yeah, we want to in particular focus on things that we can impact. Yep. And those big drivers of productivity. That is, looking next year, what is likely to lead to an increase in our gross domestic product? How can we get that increase to our gross domestic product? Yep. Now, we've just gone over the last 70 years in particular, since the end of the last World War. Sorry, I'll come to the T intersection. Which way should I go? Let's go up. Don't want to end up in the creek. But last 70 years, we've had an environment of constant economic growth. Let's say, had some hiccups along the way. Sorry about the sun. Had some hiccups along the way, but in general, yeah, reasonable level of economic prosperity, and feels like the norm is economic growth. That is 2, 3, 4, 5% economic growth is where we end up most years. Every now and again, we might have a little bit higher. And kind of only in times of crisis do we see maybe economic growth, economic prosperity reversing for a little bit. Let me just take a seat. So, and what's driven that in particular? Let's have a look at those three things. Well, yeah, population's been expanding, right? When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, there was a big population scares that there's just too many people, and we're going to act like let's say like a virus and decimate the planet. Yeah, we're doing a reasonable job at that, but things have kind of reversed, and thoughts have reversed on that, especially over the last 15 years. But yes, population growth has been a big part of that. So more workers. Skill sets, yeah, education in particular has been a focus. We're trying to build our the education levels of our peoples, and generally that's increased over time. And definitely technology's increased, right? Last 70 years we moved from pre-computer age to the computer age, internet, digitization of the world, cloud computing in particular, automation, robotics, AI, a constant growth in technologies as well. And so yes, that's been driving the global economy over this over this last 70 years, and has been a big driver throughout the history of mankind. But in particular, those last 70 years, we've seen, especially as we perhaps decided to stop fighting global wars, that which isn't a great use of the workforce, right? and often sees a lot of the workforce disappear. But one of those factors, like I was kind of mentioning, might be on the way out, and that is population growth. Forecasts are still for global population to grow from where it is now by another 25% by the turn of this next century. So that's, over this next 75 years, we should get economic growth, maybe around 25% in total over that 75 years due to population growth. But that's without compounding, it's maybe 1/3% a year of growth from population on average, maybe. So it's not going to be a huge driver, maybe not as big of a driver as it was in the past. And in some places in particular, it's going to be a detractor. That is, there are some workforces around the world which will shrink. There are some that are shrinking at the moment, and perhaps going to start shrinking quite rapidly. Shout out to East Asia, maybe Mediterranean states, Eastern Europe, perhaps. In particular, but most of the West is in this decline. So whereas population growth may have been a reasonable, mechanism for our, prosperity over the last 70 years, that might be reversing, especially an aging population, less kids coming through. So people moving out of the workforce and not being replaced by the younger generation in the same numbers. So that's one thing that might be of concern. What about skill sets? Education is probably something where there is limits. Perhaps I don't think we're anywhere near the limits, but there's probably only so much you can, educate. At the moment, we've moved to a system whereby there's a lot of the developed world and developing world where it's very common nowadays for young adults to stay in universities longer. You go to some job postings, and to some positions, entry level means you need a master's degree, for example. So I'm just getting bitten by mosquitoes, and so that seems to be maybe turning a little bit, perhaps, but with AI, maybe not. But level of intelligence, level of literacy. Once you get to high 90%, especially for literacy rates, you can't go much beyond that, right? It's a one-off kind of growth deal, and we've seen that around the world. We've seen literacy rates improve, and for most of the developed and developing worlds, it's up close to 100% language literacy rates. Other literacy measures we might look at, like financial literacy, or technological literacy, or digital literacy. There's probably still ways to go there. But now we start getting linked in now with that third lever, and that's technology. And I think overall, this is what we're kind of hoping will save us. That is, this is what we're kind of hoping will continue to help us to get that 3 to 4 to 5% economic growth, sometimes a bit more, hopefully. That is the growth that comes out of technological advancements. Traditionally, technologies are slow to move through, economies slow to get adopted. But perhaps we need to start getting good at, in particular, bringing on new technologies, so that as we need to replace some of those growth drivers from population, and perhaps from maxing out our educations, then we need to start pulling on that technology lever a lot more.